If you've been in certain Tolkien fan circles anytime in the past couple years, you'd surely know by now that one frequent point of discussion is this quote by George R. R. Martin. Ruling is hard. Tolkien can say that Aragorn became king and reigned for 100 years and he was wise and good, but Tolkien doesn't ask the question, what was Aragorn's tax policy? Did he maintain a standing army? What did he do in times of flood and famine? And what about all these orcs? By the end of the war, Sauron is gone but all the orcs aren't gone, they're in the mountains. Did Aragorn pursue a policy of systemic genocide and kill them? Even the little baby orcs? In the little orc cradles. The reason I'm making this video is because I'd like to add my own take on the subject. For everyone who's new here, hi, I'm Elena and welcome in the tower. If you want to listen to a different perspective on this subject, I greatly recommend In Deep Geek's take, where they comment on Aragorn's kingship and influence throughout his time as a ruler. In my take, I'd like to discuss the fact that, while we do not know the exact details of Aragorn's tax policy, we do know that Aragorn himself is an incredibly competent and trialed ruler. Why is that? Well, that's why we're here today. Aragorn was born in 3rd Age 2931 in the Angle, and at 2 years old he was brought by his mother GRRM to dwell in Rivendell, in fear that the enemy sought to break the line of Isildur after the death of his father Aragorn. Aragorn's entire childhood and teenagehood was spent in the presence of some of the most brilliant minds in Middle-earth, not to mention the company of Elrond, Lord of Imladris, who is considered the greatest scholar of the 3rd Age. Elrond served under Gil-galad, fostered countless generations of Dunedain science in Rivendell, and was instrumental in the safekeeping of Isildur's line. He also had in his protection the symbols of the Northern Dunedain, which are the Scepter of Anaminas and the Ring of Barahir. Given his age, position and proximity to the Dunedain kingdoms, Elrond must have given counsel to Arnor when it still existed. Aragorn had a perfect teacher that could bestow upon him all the history, custom, genealogies, and past laws of his people. He also had Glorfindel to teach him the history of the elves and of Beleriand. He had Eladan and Elrohir to teach him how to ride a horse and how to fight, and he had Erestor to teach him all possible dialects of Sindarin and even Quenya. By the time Aragorn left Rivendell in search of his people at age 21, he was a powerhouse of knowledge. Yet theory without practice is more often than not useless. So young Aragorn assumed his proper role as the 16th chieftain of the Dunedain, left the comforts of Rivendell, and lived by the side of his people learning how to govern properly. The funny thing here that prompted him to leave Rivendell for the Dunedain settlements in the first place was Aragorn falling in love with Arwen Undomiel. Arwen rejected him, and a fire was lit in Aragorn's heart that burned so bright that nothing in the whole of Middle-earth could quench it. Elrond told him that until he becomes king, he can't marry Arwen. So my man here said, I'm going to become king of both Gondor and Arnor. Watch me. And he went and did it. Mad lad actually did it. I'm so proud of him. After a couple years spent by the side of his people doing his duties as a chieftain, adventuring with his bestie Halbarad, Aragorn said, I learned everything I could here. So at 26 he left. Between the age of 26 and 49 he served in the army of King Thengel of Rohan and that of Ecthelion II, steward of Gondor, going by the name Thorongil, and his work raised the morale in the west and countered the threat of Sauron. Ecthelion II, son of Turgon, was a man of wisdom. He encouraged all men of worth from near or far to enter his service. In much that he did, he had the aid and service of a great captain whom he loved above all. Thorongil men called him in Gondor the Eagle of the Star, for he was swift and keen-eyed, and wore a silver star upon his cloak. But no one knew his true name, nor in what land he was born. He came to Ecthelion from Rohan, where he had served the king Thengel, but he was not one of the Rohirrim. He was a great leader of men, by land or by sea. But he departed into the shadows whence he came before the days of Ecthelion were ended. It was now that Aragorn earned priceless military experience that helped him later during the War of the Ring. During his time as Thorongil, he even led an assault against Umbar, and he burned many Corsair ships and personally slew the Umbarim lord during the battle. Thorongil often counseled Ecthelion that the strength of the rebels in Umbar was a great peril to Gondor and a threat to the fiefs of the south that would prove deadly if Sauron moved to open war. At last he got leave of the steward and gathered a small fleet, and he came to Umbar unlooked for by night, and there burned a great part of the ships of the Corsairs. He himself overthrew the captain of the Haven in battle upon the quays, and then he withdrew his fleet with small loss. But when they came back to Pelargir, to men's grief and wonder, he would not return to Minas Tirith, where great honour awaited him. After that he went south to Harad and Umbar, then east to Rhûn, and came back to rest in Lorien. During his time in the south and east, Aragorn learned the laws and customs of the Haradrim, Umbarim and Easterlings, which came in handy at a later point in life. Aragorn, here only 50 years old, now has both social and military knowledge on a variety of countries. Most important, he lived in Gondor for a while and familiarized himself with Gondor's political system and noble families, and the method the steward used in ruling Minas Tirith. All that's left to do now is wait for the right moment to claim the kingship. It's incredible how pretty much Aragorn's entire life is just a tutorial on being king. He was literally raised to be king. He has learned from the best and most illustrious minds, from rich and poor, from human, elves, dwarves, and the Maya alike, as he was very good friends with Gandalf. He spent 30 years learning about the people he would one day rule. Even after he becomes king, Anuminas, a city that stood deserted for 2000 years, is rebuilt. Minas Tirith is rebuilt with gates of Mithril. He has enough monarchical power to wage constant campaign of wars and annex Haradrim and Easterling lands. The reunited kingdom truly prospered under Aragorn's rule. Coming back to the question George R. R. Martin asks, Aragorn did not have a standing army, he only had the garrison of Minas Tirith. When an army needed to be assembled, he called upon the lords of the provinces of Gondor, who would in turn raise their people and march them to where the king needed them to be. What about the orcs? Aragorn led a campaign of complete genocide against the orcs, hunting them down to near extinction until they were forced to hide themselves high in the mountains in fear of him and his army. What about flood and famine? Well, according to Gondor's geography, a flood is very unlikely. Famine? They have the fields of Minas Tirith, which are said to be the most prosperous and fertile land in Gondor. They also have the gardens of Gondor in vicinity. I truly believe a seasoned ranger like Aragorn would never allow a famine to spread through Gondor. He's lived a big chunk of his life as a northern ranger. He knows how to be prepared when food is low. I don't think Aragorn is simply a good ruler because of his good heart. To say so dismisses all the contextual evidence given to us, and is a disservice to Tolkien's world building. A Song of Ice and Fire fans, please don't come after me. I have kind things to say about Osoyath too, I just haven't gotten around to making a video about that yet. I believe Tolkien and Martin's priorities just lie elsewhere in their world building. And that's for today! If you like my work, consider subscribing to the channel. I love talking about fantasy like Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire, Dragon Age, The Inheritance Cycle, The Dark Crystal, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Dragon Prince, The Witcher, BBC Merlin, and so much more. If you want to get more frequent updates from me, be sure to follow me on Twitter, the link's in the description below. I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed up to this point and for all your wonderful comments. It was very nice reading them. If you have anything that's fantasy related that you'd like me to talk about, leave a comment below and I'll see what I can do. Until next time.